The ship floated silently through the dark vacuum, its hull scorched and gouged like it had been through hell itself. To the untrained eye, it looked like debris, just another hunk of dead metal adrift in the endless night. But the moment the Tier Val cruiser picked it up on long-range sensors, alarms were triggered, not because of what it was, but because of where it came from. Commander Valth, we've intercepted an object drifting out of the Kranix expanse. The markings are unclear, but the trajectory traces back to designation 9X7. The bridge of the Tier Val cruiser fell deathly silent. Every officer on the deck knew that designation by heart. The Galactic Registry didn't even bother with a name. It was simply Class 15 Death World 9X7, the kind of world that bred extinction-level predators in the water, land, and air. A planet so violent, so biologically hostile that even the most aggressive alien species refused to land scout drones on its surface. It had swallowed every probe, disintegrated every ship, and erased every trace of life that dared to analyze it. No one survived 9X7. No one visited 9X7. It was a cosmic red flag, abandon all hope. So when a ship came out of that place, the entire Galactic Patrol took notice. Valth narrowed his eyes, any life signs? Faint but yes, deep within the core structure. The readings are chaotic, we're not sure what species. Valith stood slowly from his command chair. Get the containment crews ready and prepare the auto-defense drones. If something came out of that world, I don't care if it's half dead, we don't take chances. The vessel was a jagged, asymmetrical thing, an insult to traditional galactic engineering, built like a brick, armored like a tank, and welded together in defiance of every law of vacuum physics. No aesthetics, no elegance, just brutal efficiency. Inside it was worse. Rusted corridors, scratched-up bulkheads, wires hanging like exposed veins. When the Tier Val team breached the outer hull, they expected carnage. They found something else entirely. Dozens of cryopods lined the inner hold. Most were empty, shattered long ago. Some had been manually shut down, but 5 were still active. One blinked red, life signs detected. The bioscan flickered. It didn't match any known galactic species. The computer threw up a name from the oldest Terran database still circulating in black site archives. A species Homo sapiens. Origin planet Earth's. Status extinct unverified. Threat levels variable. Notes aggressively adaptive, highly resilient, illogical behavior patterns. Avoid direct confrontation. Valth stared at the file, jaw tightening. Humans. His second-in-command, Jero, took a step back. I thought they were gone, lost to war, disease, madness. They were, or so we believed, but this ship came from 9X7. Valth looked at the vessel again with fresh dread. And if that hellworld was home to them, what the hell does that make us? They brought the active pod aboard, kept it sealed in 6 layers of quarantine. The thing inside wasn't large, barely over 6 feet tall by their measurements, but its vitals were steady, and its body showed a history of trauma most species wouldn't survive. A shattered femur that had knit with rudimentary surgery, a missing lung replaced by a crude cybernetic pump, skin burned and regrown multiple times. This human had lived war, not just once but repeatedly, like it was built for it. 3 days later, it woke up. It didn't panic, it didn't shout or cry, it sat up, stared through the glass and blinked slowly. Then it smiled. That was the moment Val's crew knew they were in trouble. Because that smile, it wasn't relief, it wasn't confusion. It was something colder. It was confidence, as if waking up in an alien ship after drifting out of a death world was just another Tuesday for this thing. When they opened the communication feed, the human lined toward the microphone. "Where the hell am I?" asked Jace Markle, voice gravelly, laced with exhaustion and sarcasm. "And is there coffee, or am I going to have to break someone's neck to get a cup?" The translator scrambled to keep up. Valth stared at the screen, and then the whisper began to spread through the fleet. The humans survived 9X7. That world didn't kill them. They tamed it. Valth didn't answer the human right away. He simply stared at the monitor, at that tired, half-grinning face behind the quarantine glass. The human's eyes scanned the room on the other side, nodding every camera, every sensor, every angle. He wasn't just looking, he was assessing, cataloging like a predator dropped into a new hunting ground. Jaro leaned in close. "Sir, do we respond?" The translator is still filtering his phrasing. Apparently, break someone's neck is an Earth idiom. "No," Valth said coldly, "it's not an idiom." He stepped back from the console, jaw tight. The room was filled with trained officers from one of the most powerful species in the Galactic Patrol, yet there was something deeply unsettling about that single human sitting behind glass. The readings showed his body was still in recovery, malnourished, low oxygen blood toxicity, but his stare was sharp, aware, and most of all unafraid. Valth activated the mic. You are aboard a Tarval cruiser under the Galactic Enclave. You emerged from a ship traced to Deathworld 9X7. State your name and purpose. The human chuckled, you mean Earth's. Valth froze, Earth. That name hadn't been uttered in over 2 centuries, the last known location of the human race marked as self-extinct after a series of planetary wars and environmental collapses. A dead rock. Yet this man had the audacity to correct them. Earth, Valith repeated slowly, the name humans gave to 9X7. The human's smile faded, his voice dropped an octave. You call it a death world, we called it Tuesday, now stop stalling, where's my crew? Valith glanced at Jaro, then back at the human. Only one pod was active, the rest were either destroyed or empty. The human's expression didn't break, but the twitch in his jaw said enough. He lowered his head for a moment, silent, fists clenched, then he looked back up. I see, he muttered, so that's it, huh, guess I'm the last one. Valth cleared his throat. Your ship, it was a combat-class vessel, repurposed, heavily armored, built to withstand extreme environments. How long were you down there? The human stared through him. We crashed 2 years ago, 17 of us, survivors from the Calderon, a long-range colony ship. We made it work, hunted what we could, rebuilt systems, modified the ship from scrap, lost people along the way, disease, predators, starvation, you name it. He paused, a flicker of memory in his eyes. They died hard, every one of them, fighting to stay alive. Jaro whispered behind Valith, 2 years on that world. The Tarval had studied Death World 9X7. Its atmosphere was barely breathable, temperatures swung from sub-zero to volcanic in a single day. The predators were nightmarish hybrids, acid-spitting serpents, land sharks with armor-plated hides, flying scavengers with neurotoxins in their claws. Even microbes on that planet could melt flesh in hours. No known species could survive more than a week, and yet this human had lasted 2 years. Valith returned to the mic, your names. The man hesitated, then simply, Captain Jace Markle. Valith turned off the mic, stepping aside. Full genetic sequencing, find out how much of this story is true, and do not, under any circumstances, open that chamber. The medtechs worked swiftly. They weren't used to human DNA, it had become a footnote in xenobiology texts, a cautionary tale of self-destruction. But what they found shocked them. Captain Jace Markle wasn't just human. He was enhanced, radiation-scarred mitochondria, mutated but stable skeletal reinforcement consistent with improvised bone grafting, muscle density 40% higher than Tirvaline brain scans showing cortical anomalies. Evidence of neural stress tolerance far beyond most sapiens. This wasn't just a survivor, he was built by hell itself. Later that night, as Valith reviewed the files alone in his quarters, a private alert pinged. A technician had attempted to decrypt the black box from Jace's ship. What they found wasn't a technical log. It was a journal. Day 12 lost Marquez to the sky leeches, took half his skull, buried what was left under a thermal vent. Kira's leg is infected. I used engine oil and fire to seal the wound. Crude, but she's alive. She asked me if we'd ever leave. I lied. Day 106, the native apex predator learned to mimic our emergency signals. Lured Owen out, we killed it, but too late. Ripped Owen's spine out, we rigged it as a trip wire for its kind. They don't like their own bones, something instinctual. Day 434, we're running out of time. We think we found a way to launch the ship again. Barely, Kira's dying. I promised I'd get her off this rock. I promised all of them. Valith closed the file, hand trembling. This man, this human, had fought through conditions that should have broken gods. And yet Jace Markle had walked out of that nightmare alive. The next morning, Valith returned to the observation room. The human was awake, eating the ration paste like it was steak. You'll need to answer more questions, Valith said. Jace shrugged, sure, but here's a better idea. How about you start answering mine? Valith tilted his head. Why would we do that? Jace stood slowly, that same quiet confidence in his step. Because if humans made 9X7 their home, he stepped forward, eyes locked. What do you think we'll do to you if you try to cage us? Valth didn't respond right away. He felt a strange chill ripple through his upper spine, a biological reflex the Tyrval species hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Not the kind born of danger, but the kind born of not understanding the thing in front of you. Jace Markle stood behind the reinforced quarantine glass, arms crossed, not threatening, not raising his voice, just watching. Calculating. Valth finally said, "No one is trying to cage you, Captain. We're trying to understand." Jace tilted his head. Understanding doesn't start with a gun at my head and a quarantine cell. Valth narrowed his eyes. You emerged from a ship that survived the deadliest ecosystem in known space. Your species was marked extinct. Your physiology is radically altered. Tell me, Captain, how should we have greeted you? Jace grinned that sharp, knowing grin. Coffee and pancakes would have been a good start. The translator stuttered for a moment. Jaro, standing behind Valeth, muttered, "What's a pancake?" Jace laughed to himself. Exactly. Silence followed. Valth finally said, "We're processing the black box from your ship. The journal entries are disturbing." Jace didn't flinch. Yeah, it was a disturbing planet. Kira, she was one of yours. Jace blinked slowly. His mouth opened, then closed again. Something cracked in his expression just for a heartbeat. She was the last one left. I promised her we'd make it. I promised we'd get home. He swallowed hard. I lied. For the first time, Val didn't see a monster. He saw a man who had lost everything over and over and still kept going, not because he believed he'd survive, but because someone else needed him to pretend they would. That kind of endurance wasn't bravery. It was madness wrapped in love. And it was dangerous. Valeth stepped back from the mic, "End the interview." "But sir," Jaro started. "End it," Valeth snapped. They shut off the comms. The glass went opaque. "Commander," Jaro whispered, voice low, "if this is what humans are now, then what were they before extinction?" Valeth didn't answer. His thoughts were racing. Across the galaxy, the Enclave was already receiving fragments of the Discovery. An extinct species had survived a Class 15 death world. There would be panic, fear, opportunists, warmongers. There would be interest. He needed control fast. A few hours later, in the central conference hall of the cruiser, Valth called a private meeting. Only 4 officers were present, all senior command. The lights were dim. A silent alarm ensured recording systems were offline. "I want full genetic duplication," Valth said, voice cold. "Back up Jace Markel's DNA and isolate the adaptive traits. We'll forward samples to Enclave Biogenetics for testing." One of the officers stiffened. "That's a violation of the Galactic Preservation Accord. So is surviving a planet no one was meant to live on." "You think we can use this?" Valeth leaned forward. "If one human did this, imagine what 1,000 could do, trained, equipped, unleashed. They're extinct on paper. That means no protections, no citizenship. We control their narrative." Jaro flinched. "Sir, he's not an asset, he's a warning." Valth looked at him coldly. "And warnings are only dangerous if we ignore them." Back in the medical bay, Jace paced the small chamber. The opaque glass flickered, revealing his reflection. He leaned in and whispered, "I know you're listening." No responses. "You're going to want to test me, study me, maybe even copy me." He leaned closer. "I wouldn't recommend it." Then he walked to the far corner and sat down cross-legged, breathing slow and deep. 2 decks above, the biogenetics lab had already begun processing the DNA samples. The lead researcher, a GV splicer with 4 nimble arms and a reputation for pushing ethics, analyzed the first simulation of Markel's cell regeneration. He froze. The cells weren't just repairing themselves, they were learning. Each simulated trauma made the next repair faster, smarter. The DNA was rewriting itself in real time. "By the voids," the Gative murmured. "They don't adapt to survive, they survive to adapt." The room behind him went dark suddenly. All the lights across the ship dimmed. Main power surged, then dropped to critical levels. And in the medbay, Jace stood up. The emergency lights bathed him in red. A robotic voice crackled over the shipwide intercom. "Containment breach detected in quarantine chamber." Valth's comm screamed, "We have a system override, unknown origin." Jace Markell smiled once more as the locks on his cell clicked. "I warned you," he said. The medbay plunged into chaos as alarms shrieked and red lights pulsed in the walls like a dying heartbeat. Medical drones buzzed to life, scrambling toward Jace's chamber, but they stopped halfway, hovering in place like they'd hit an invisible wall. They didn't malfunction. They refused to go closer. Valith raced through the corridor, his boots pounding against the metallic floor as emergency sirens howled overhead. Officers swarmed past him in panic. Gun squads scrambled toward the medbay. Jaro was already shouting into his wrist link, trying to isolate the breach. "This wasn't from outside," he yelled. "Sir, this was an internal override. The quarantine door was unlocked from the inside." Valve skidded to a stop. How? That chamber's sealed with 6-tier biometric encryption. Jaro looked back at him, pale and shaking. Then either someone gave him the code or he figured it out on his own. That thought hit Valve like a blade through the chest. Impossible. No species could read a Tier Val crypto code without years of training, not without advanced equipment or insider knowledge. But humans didn't follow rules. They bent them, broke them, rewrote them. Theth stormed into the outer corridor of the medbay and raised his hand to signal his troops. "Do not engage unless ordered," he commanded. "If he's still in the room, we—" Then the lights flickered. The door was already open and Jace was gone. All that remained was the shattered remains of a chair, one disarmed drone sparking in a twitching heap, and a handprint smeared in blood on the wall. But it wasn't Jace's blood. Valth stared at it unsettled. Then Jaro stepped forward, scanning the print. "Sir, this isn't Tier Val either." Valth frowned, "Then whose is it?" Jaro turned the scanner toward him. "Gate of biogenetic researcher, the one who first decoded Jace's DNA." Valith's stomach turned cold. Security feed. Blacked out, he was the first to see the adaptive scan. It must have triggered Jace somehow. Or, Val muttered, he tried to use Jace as a sample and paid for it. A comm crackled in Valth's earpiece. "Commander, we've got movement, Deck 4 engineering section." Valth turned, already running. By the time they reached the engineering deck, Jace had already taken out 2 more guards non-lethally. One was locked inside a tool closet, sedated. The other was zip-bound to a coolant pipe with an apologetic note taped to his chest. "Nothing personal, wrong place, wrong orders." Valth stared at the note in disbelief. "Is he mocking us?" Jaro asked. "No," Valth said grimly, "he's sending a message." He tapped into the ship's PA system. "Captain Jace Markle, you are aboard a vessel of the Galactic Enclave. Your actions constitute a breach of protocol and hostile intent. Surrender immediately and you won't be harmed." There was a pause. Then Jace's voice filtered back through the system, unamplified, raw, sarcastic. "You're going to have to forgive me if I don't trust the whole surrender and you won't be harmed bit. Not after the sedatives, scans, and attempted vivisection." Jaro flinched. "He knows what we tried to do to him." Jace continued, calm and casual. "Look, I didn't come here to cause trouble. I woke up in a cell, watched your scientists dig through my blood like it was candy, and realized real quick I'm not a guest here. I'm a specimen. That never ends well in alien stories." Valith stepped forward, cutting the feed. "He's not just surviving, he's learning our systems fast." They scanned the area, no trace. Jaro turned to Valith again, this time quieter. "He's not trying to escape. If he was, he'd have taken a shuttle by now." "You think he's doing something else?" Valith looked toward the primary data core room. "He's headed for the archives." "Why?" "Because if he's half as smart as I think he is, he wants to know what happened to Earth." Deep in the archive room, Jay stared at the hollow screen as thousands of files streamed past. The records were garbled, encrypted, rewritten, but he saw enough. Earth hadn't died in war, not exactly. The Enclave had declared the planet unfit for development, marked it as an ecological hazard, and enforced a containment protocol. In other words, they'd abandoned them, cut them off, no aid, no support, no evacuation. They left humanity to die not because they were dangerous, but because they were inconvenient. He pulled up the last surviving image in the archive. Earth burning under a red sky, its oceans boiled down, its cities flooded or cracked apart. They hadn't survived in spite of the universe. They'd survived because the universe tried to erase them and failed. Behind him, the door hissed open. Valth stepped in alone, no guards, no weapons drawn. "Jace didn't turn, so now you know," said Valth quietly. Jace's voice was hollow. "You left us to rot." Valth exhaled slowly. The Council believed humanity was unstable, too wild, too unpredictable. They thought isolation was the only answer. Jace finally turned. "You made a death world and we made it a home." Valith looked him in the eyes. "That's what scares them most." Jace took one step forward, then another. No, what should scare you, he said, voice like steel, is that we're coming back. Valeth didn't reach for his weapon, he knew better. There was a line in Jace Markle's eyes that couldn't be crossed, not without blood being spilled. And while the Tyrvil were no strangers to war, this was different. This wasn't war. This was vengeance wrapped in discipline. I believe you, Val said finally, but I need to know something. Jace stood still, silent. Valeth continued, are you alone? A flicker of something unreadable passed across Jace's face. His eyes narrowed just slightly, just enough for Val to know he hit something. Jace said nothing. Valeth took a slow step forward. You said 17 people survived the crash. We only found your pod, the others were dead or empty. But your black box mentioned attempts to launch again, not just to escape but to transmit coordinates. He watched Jace carefully. Did any of them make it off the planet before you did? Jace exhaled through his nose. It wasn't a denial. We sent out a decoy pod first. Had to. Kira was too weak to travel. I rigged the signal to draw attention toward me, not them. His voice lowered. We had to gamble. Valeth's heart dropped, so there could be more of you out there. There are more, Jace said, almost like a vow. And if they survived like I did, they're not going to come back quietly, not after what you did. Valeth turned toward the screen. The last image of Earth still glowed dimly in the corner, battered, broken, scarred, and yet still spinning. What do you plan to do now? Valeth asked. Jay shrugged. First, find out what your council's hiding. You don't seal off an entire species without a reason. You bury them because you're afraid of what they'll dig up. Valeth hesitated, and after. Jace walked toward him slowly. I'm going to wake your galaxy up. The silence that followed was oppressive. Then Jace reached down and pulled a small metal shard from his belt, triangular, black, humming faintly. Valeth recognized it instantly. That's Tyrvil military-grade data encryption tech, Valeth said sharply. That was never issued to. I pulled it from your ship's belly, Jace cut in. Your Jev scientist was logging real-time bioadaptation trials and sending them off-world. You were never studying me for knowledge. You were trying to weaponize me. Valeth felt the truth slam into him like gravity. Jev splicers had been under quiet orders to harvest anything useful from recovered species, even if it meant breaking the laws of bioethics. But no one ever expected humans to fall into that category. They were supposed to be extinct, untouchable, ghosts of the past, not this. You want to know why we survived Earth, Jay said, stepping closer. It wasn't our tech, it wasn't strength, it wasn't even luck. He tapped his head. It was because no one told us we couldn't. Valeth swallowed hard, then Jace tossed the encrypted chip into his hands. Consider this a favor, he said. Everything your people tried to steal from me, I'm giving it back. Valeth looked down at the device. But understand, Jace continued, his voice like frost, I won't give the others that same courtesy. They'll come armed, angry, and trained by a planet designed to kill gods. He stepped past Valeth toward the exit. Lock me up again if you want, strip my DNA, run your tests. None of it matters now. The Enclave will know I'm alive, and if they try to hide it, he smiled then, I'll teach them what it means to fear humans again. The doors slid open for him. Valeth didn't stop him. He couldn't. Instead, he stared at the chip in his hands, the knowledge, the science, the truth, and knew in his core that something had changed, not just in this ship, in the entire galaxy. Somewhere out there, more survivors might still be waking up. Somewhere out there, the stars were shifting. And somewhere, Earth wasn't a grave anymore. It was a signal, a warning that humanity, thought buried in dust and ash, was not just alive but returning. And this time, they weren't coming in peace. The ship's corridors felt different now. Quieter, heavier, not because of any change in lighting or temperature, but because everyone knew Jace Markle was no longer a captive. He was a presence. And the ship, despite its walls of steel and its protocols carved in ancient laws, felt like it had let something inside it that didn't belong, something raw and untamed, something that shouldn't have survived and yet had. Valeth sat alone in the strategy chamber, the encryption chip Jace had given him resting on the table like a loaded weapon. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of stolen data. Beside it, his terminal glowed with the Council's latest message. Do not engage, do not transmit beyond level 4 clearance. Maintain containment, reinforcements en route. Containment, like Jace was some wild virus to box up and study. Valeth leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. He had seen war, he had watched planets burn, but he had never seen what he saw in that human's eyes, grief sharpened into precision. That was the thing about Markle, he wasn't just a survivor. He was a soldier forged in desperation and held together by the memory of the ones he lost. And now that soldier was loose on a ship that barely understood what he represented. A knock came at the door, enters. Jaro stepped in visibly tense. We have a situation. Valith nodded for him to continue. The communications array just picked up a ping, not a standard signal. It's encrypted in a waveform pattern, human pre-extinction Earth code. Valith sat upright, location. Outer sector beyond the Yavari Nebula. It's bouncing between relay points like it's trying to mask its origin, but we triangulated the source. It's a ship, small but fast, civilian-built, registered to a name that's not in our archive. Valith's eyes narrowed, say it. Jaro hesitated, Kira Thorns. Silence. Valith rose slowly from his chair. I thought she died. Well, so did Jace. Valith turned to the wall console, bringing up the nav map. A blinking red dot pulsed in the corner of the screen. Moving, alive. She made it out, Valith whispered. She's still alive. If she's anything like Markle, Jaro leaned in, we're not ready for her. No, Valith said, we're not. Jay stood in the observation chamber now, arms crossed, staring out at the infinite stars. He could feel the shift in the ship, hear the hurried footsteps, the whispers behind him, the sense of contained panic. They didn't know what to do with him. Good, he didn't know what to do with them either. He'd grown used to silence. Earth was full of noise, but 9x7 had taught him to appreciate the quiet, the breathing of trees, the movement of dirt, the subtle hum of predators stalking nearby. You didn't survive by being louder. You survived by watching everything. He heard the door open behind him. Valith stepped in slowly. No weapons, no guards. We picked up a signal, Valith said quietly. Jace turned, one eyebrow raised. Kira, Valith added, she's alive. For a second, Jace didn't move. Then, like something old and fragile breaking loose inside him, he whispered, she made it. Valith nodded. She's heading toward a moon in the Vega system, likely for repairs. Our scans show she's not alone. Jace squinted. How many? Valith paused. 2, maybe 3 others, all human. Jace stepped forward, the fire returning to his voice. They survived. The other drop ships seem so. Jace exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath for 2 years. And then, for the first time since he woke up on this ship, he smiled, not the cold, calculating smirk he wore like armor, but something real. Something wounded but still breathing. Valith studied him. What will you do when you find them? Rebuild. And after that? Jace turned back toward the stars. Make the bastards who left us their pay. Valith didn't flinch. He understood now. The Council had created this future when they sealed off Earth, when they left an entire species to burn instead of lifting a hand. That wasn't survival of the fittest. It was the birth of a new kind of predator, one that looked human but wasn't quite anymore. Valith said, I can delay the Council a few days. Maybe send a fake report. Jace glanced sideways. Why? Valith hesitated. Because I think I'd rather have you as a friend than an enemy. Jace held out his hand. Smart man. They shook, and just like that, the galaxy shifted again, because the last known human wasn't alone anymore. And this time they had allies. The rendezvous point was a fractured moon orbiting a burned-out gas giant, officially catalogued as Vega 12b but long forgotten by galactic cartographers. Its surface was cracked like a shattered egg, littered with mining debris from a colony that failed over a century ago. No one came here anymore, which made it the perfect place to meet the ghosts of humanity. Jay stood at the edge of the shuttle's ramp, his boots crunching against the dust. The thin, craven atmosphere tasted metallic bitter. It reminded him of home. Valith had honored his word. He'd faked a damage report to buy Jace a 2-day window, no patrols, no surveillance, but it wouldn't last. The Council wasn't stupid, and they sure as hell weren't merciful. A small ship rested 50 meters away, built from salvage like Jace's, but sleeker, smarter, scavenged parts stitched together with human stubbornness and wild genius. He could see the patches welded onto the hull, the faded letters spray-painted near the docking clamp, Stormbird. A name only humans would give a ship that should have died in space. The hatch hissed open. Kira stepped out. At first, Jace didn't move. His brain couldn't accept it, not until she took another step and he saw the limp in her leg, the way her jaw clenched with every movement, the fire still burning behind her eyes. Then he ran. They collided hard, arms locked tight, like gravity had finally remembered how to work again. Neither of them spoke at first, just breathing, just holding. "I thought you were dead," she whispered into his shoulder. "I almost was," he replied. "Always." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "You look like shit." He laughed. "You should see the other guy." Then came the others, 3 survivors, 2 men, 1 woman, all scarred, all changed. But their eyes told the same story. They had crawled through hell too, and like Jace, they'd brought hell back with them. They sat around a portable emitter that flickered with warmth and light. It wasn't much, just a hologram fire and a box of rehydrated food packs, but it felt real enough. They caught up in pieces. None of them wanted to talk about the worst parts, but they all knew. Kira explained what happened after Jace's decoy pod launched. "We thought we lost you, but we got out with one working engine and a prayer. We've been hiding ever since. The Enclave doesn't know how many of us made it. I kept it that way." Jace nodded. "Good, keep it that way a little longer." "Why?" He pulled out a small hollow chip and placed it in the center of the group. "This is everything I pulled from the Tier Val cruiser. Genetic data, military scans, notes from their biolabs. They've been trying to replicate what we are, turn us into a blueprint." The group went quiet. "They want us," Jace said, "not because they fear us, but because they envy us." Kira's voice was sharp. "They think they can build us in a lab." "They don't understand," Jace said, leaning forward. "What we are now, that didn't come from test tubes. It came from watching our friends die in our arms, from hunting predators in acid rain, from boiling water with ship batteries just to stay alive. You can't clone that." One of the survivors, a thick-built man named Reyes, muttered, "So what do we do? Hide forever?" Jace shook his head. "We're not hiding anymore." He tapped the hollow chip again. A star map flickered to life, dozens of systems marked in red. Colonies, council stations, resource hubs, all tied to the species that left Earth to rot. "This is where we start pushing back." Kira looked at him carefully. "You want a wars?" "No," Jay said, "I want a reckonings." They didn't cheer, they didn't roar. That wasn't who they were anymore, but every head nodded, they understood. That night the storm rolled across the moon's surface, iron winds sparking blue lightning along the rock. Inside the storm bird, the humans planned, scanned, shared what they'd learned. And in orbit above them, beyond their sight, a small tear valve floated silently, cloaked, listening. It recorded everything and it sent it straight to the Galactic Council. Within hours, every system with an enclave seal was locked down, commanders were pulled from retirement, black sites were reactivated, and a single order echoed across the stars. Project Final Contingency reinstated. The humans are awake. The Galactic Council convened in silence. 12 representatives from 12 of the most dominant species sat inside a cold chamber of obsidian glass and starlight, orbiting a planet no one was allowed to name. No audience, no media, no record, only one agenda: the return of humanity. High Chancellor Vith of the Vaughn Dominion, a creature of scales and intellect, broke the silence first. The Tyrval confirmed the reports. The human survivor Jace Markle escaped containment. He now leads a cluster of survivors believed extinct. A thin Avon delegate from the Zarin Cade hissed, "They've begun marking targets. Strategic ones. They're not hiding anymore." The insectoid Mal emissary twitched. "We should have incinerated the planet when we had the chance." "And invited every other species to question our morals," Vith snapped. "No, Earth was quarantined, buried in bureaucracy. We told ourselves they'd fade into dust. They didn't." A voice said coldly. Everyone turned. Representative Darson of the Aravic Order, one of the few species to have fought alongside humans centuries ago, stood slowly. "You didn't quarantine a species. You buried your mistake. You called them unstable, but what you feared was that they couldn't be controlled." "They're unpredictable," someone muttered. "They're relentless," Darson corrected. "They survive the unspeakable, adapt in ways your science can't predict, and now they have a cause." Another delegate snarled, "We outnumber them 1,000,000 to 1." Darson fixed him with a dead stare. So did the wildfires on Honest 3, until one ember burned the entire continent. No one spoke for a while, then the Chancellor whispered, "Then it's agreed. Final contingency begins." Lights dimmed, a panel opened in the center of the table, revealing an ancient device, pre-Galactic-era tech. Banned, illegal, forgotten. Except it hadn't been forgotten. Begin production, Vira ordered. The lights on the device turned red. Begin the extinction protocol. Half a galaxy away, aboard the Stormbird, Jay sat in the cockpit, scanning frequencies. His hands moved fast, fingers instinctively rerouting power and tapping into backdoor channels once used for pre-war Terran comms. They'd picked up the signal an hour ago, a frequency long dead, now revived. Kira watched from the doorway. You look like you've seen a ghost. Jace didn't answer at first, then he turned, his face pale. They've reactivated final contingency. Kira's face hardened. I thought that was a myth. It's real, Jace said. Built back when the Enclave first made contact with Earth. They called it a safety switch. We called it a noose. Autonomous weapons, AI-driven extermination fleets. If they couldn't control us, they'd erase us. Ray's cursed, so they're coming, all of them. No, Jay said grimly, they're not sending armies, that would be too clean. He turned the monitor toward them. Dozens of red markers, unmanned vessels moving fast, hyperlane capable, each programmed for annihilation. They're sending death, and it's already on its way. Silence fell across the room, then Kira asked, what do we do? Jay stood, jaw clenched, voice low. We do what humans have always done when the universe tries to kill us. He walked toward the weapons bay. We survive. The first autonomous strike ship reached a human outpost near a collapsed mining belt. It was unarmed, just a beacon. But when it scanned for life, it found nothing, just heat signatures that looked human. It moved closer. That's when the EMP burst shattered its circuits and a hacked AI virus tore through its core. The ship never reported back. One by one, the other exterminators vanished. The Council panicked because the humans weren't just waiting. They were learning the death machines, rewiring them, hijacking them, turning the Council's weapons into a new fleet, one born from vengeance, loss, and brilliant rage. A year later, the first human-led strike force entered orbit above a Council outpost. No demands, no diplomacy, just a message broadcast across every frequency. You tried to erase us, you gave us a death world and thought we'd break. We turned it into our cradle, you made us monsters to survive. Now we've learned to aim. Then the sky went black and the war began. But the Council never understood one thing. You can destroy a world, you can erase a species, but you can't kill a story. And humanity's story had just begun again, with fire, fury, and the unbreakable will to endure.